Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Comeback Conversations. Today's episode is one that I think is going to hit home for a lot of women listening because this is not just about fat loss. It's not just about fitness. It's not just about feeling unhappy with what you see in the mirror. It goes deeper than that. Today, we're talking about why so many women lose themselves after years of being there for everyone else. And I think this is one of the biggest factors and one of the biggest things that gets overlooked because on the outside it can just look like potentially I put on a bit of weight. I've just lost some motivation. I need to be more disciplined. I need to get back to it. But underneath that, what's actually going on is this. For years, maybe even decades, you've been needed by everyone. You've been the one holding things together. You've been the one thinking ahead. You've been the one checking on everyone else. You've been the one making things happen. And somewhere in all of that, you slowly stop being a priority in your own life. And that's not because you're weak, not because you don't care, not because you've failed, but because over time, when you're constantly there for everybody else, it becomes very easy to then disconnect from yourself. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I know there are women listening to this who are not lazy. They're not incapable. They're not too far gone. They're just exhausted, disconnected, and stuck in a life where they've become so used to putting themselves last that now they don't even know how to put themselves somewhere near the top again without feeling guilty. And that is such an important conversation that I don't think anybody really is having because I think a lot of women carry this silent feeling of what happened to me? Where did I go? How have I become this version of myself? And why do I feel like I'm living for everyone else and barely connected to myself anymore? And that's a conversation that I've had women who have come on and trained with me and been part of my program. And the hardest part is a lot of women feel that, but they never say it out loud. They just keep going. They keep doing the school runs, the dinners, the jobs, the life admin, the emotional support, the checking in, the organizing, the remembering, the carrying, the giving. And they become brilliant at functioning. But functioning and feeling like yourself are not the same thing. You can get through the day and still feel completely lost within it. And that's where I think a lot of women find themselves. They're surviving, but they're not connected. So, first of all, if that is you, I want to say this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. You're not dramatic, you're not selfish, you're not ungrateful, and you're not making a fuss. You're a human being who has spent years being available to everybody else. And now your own needs, confidence, identity, and well being are waving at you from the background saying, can you come back to me now? And that matters because losing yourself rarely happens all at once, it happens slowly. That's the thing. It's not usually a big dramatic moment. It's not like you wake up one day and suddenly you know who you are. It happens in tiny ways over time. You stop doing the things that make you feel good because there isn't time. You stop moving your body because everything else feels more urgent. You stop buying clothes you feel good in because you tell yourself you'll wait until you've lost weight. You stop resting properly because there's always something else to do. You stop making promises to yourself because you've broken them so many times that it feels easier not to bother. You stop even asking yourself about what you want to what you want because the answer doesn't feel relevant anymore. And bit by bit, the woman underneath all the roles starts to disappear. Not fully, she's still there, but she gets quieter and the role gets louder. Mum, partner, wife, carer, employee, daughter, friend, the reliable one, the strong one, the one who sorts things, the one who keeps going. And before long, your identity becomes almost entirely based on what you do for other people. So when life changes, the kids get older, when they need you less, when the house gets quieter, when your routines shift, when you finally get a bit of space, instead of relief, sometimes what comes up is emptiness. Because for years, your life has been built around being needed. And now you're left with this uncomfortable question: who am I when I'm not just doing everything for everyone else? That is such a deep question, and it can also be a really painful one too. Because a lot of women have spent so long being useful that they've forgotten how to simply be themselves. And I also think there's another layer to this. A lot of women weren't exactly taught to prioritize themselves in a healthy way. They were praised for being selfless, praised for coping, praised for getting on with it, praised for sacrificing, praised for putting everybody else first. So then in life, later life, when they want to start focusing on themselves again, it feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar. It even feels wrong. And that guilt is massive. That guilt sounds like I should be able to cope. There are people worse off than me. It feels selfish to spend time on me. I can't justify spending more money on myself. I'll sort myself out later. The family comes first. I'll start when things calm down. But the problem is, things often do not calm down. Life does not suddenly roll out a red carpet and say, right then, all your responsibilities gone. Now it's time to focus on yourself. That moment usually never comes. So women wait and wait and wait. And the longer they wait, the more disconnected they feel. And then something else creeps in: resentment. Not always towards anyone in particular, sometimes just towards life, towards the constant demands, towards the version of themselves that has become all output, no connection. And resentment can be hard to admit because it comes with shame, but it makes sense. When you're always giving and rarely receiving, always helping and rarely held, always available and rarely restored, something in you starts to feel depleted. That depletion often shows up physically first: low energy, weight gain, poor sleep, snacking at night, no motivation to change, to train, a body that feels unfamiliar, clothes that don't fit the same, hormones changing, stress levels high, and the list goes on. And then because that the physical side is the part people can see, that becomes the focus. I just need to lose weight. I just need to get fit. I just need to be stricter. But often the weight is not the real issue. It's the visible symptoms of years of self-neglect, stress, emotional load, and disconnection. And this is where I think so many women are misunderstood. People assume they lack discipline. They don't. A lot of these women are some of the most disciplined people that you'll ever meet. They showed up for everybody. They keep houses running. They hold jobs down. They raise families, support partners. They remember everything. They carry mental loads most people don't even notice. Discipline is not the problem. The problem is that all of the effort has been pointed away from themselves for so long now that when it comes to them, there is very little left in the tank. And that is why just be more motivated is such unhelpful advice, because this isn't just a motivation issue. It's an identity issue, a self-worth issue. It's a boundaries issue. It's a nervous system issue. I've been at the bottom of my own list for so long. I don't know how to climb back up issue. That's a completely different conversation. And I think one of the saddest parts of how this is normalized, well, sorry, how normalized it has become for women to disappear inside their own lives, to look okay on the outside, to keep smiling, to keep saying I'm fine, to keep acting like they're just a bit busy, a bit tired, a bit off track, when in reality, they feel miles away from the woman they used to be. And that can show up in simple thoughts like, I don't feel confident anymore. I don't really know what suits me. I don't feel attractive. I've lost my spark. I don't feel like me. I don't really know what I enjoy anymore. I don't trust myself to stick to anything. I don't even like photos of myself. I've become everyone else's support system, but I don't feel supported. That isn't vanity. That isn't weakness. That is grief. Sometimes women are grieving versions of themselves that they haven't seen in years. The confident version, the lighter version, the more carefree version, the stronger version, the version who had more energy, the version who laughed more, the version who did things for herself without needing permission. And when you frame it like that, you can start to understand why this feels so emotional for so many women, because it's not just I want to drop a dress size, it's I want to feel like I exist again. That's a very different kind of pain. And here's what else I think happens. A woman spends years being there for everyone else. And in that time, she becomes very good at ignoring herself. ignoring the tiredness, the unhappiness, the frustration, the discomfort, the little voice saying, this isn't working, I need more, I don't feel good, I'm not okay. And when you ignore yourself for so long, eventually you lose trust in yourself too. Because every time you say, I'll start Monday, I'll look after myself soon, I'll get back to the gym, I'll sort my food out, I'll make time for me, and then life gets in the way and you don't do it, you reinforce the idea that your own needs are optional, that your promises to yourself matter less, that you come second. And that damages confidence more than people realize. Confidence is not just about how you look, it's about whether you trust yourself. Do you trust yourself to follow through? Do you trust yourself to set a boundary? Do you trust yourself to make time for your own well being? Do you trust yourself to do what you said you would do? And a lot of women don't feel confident because they don't feel in control anymore. Not because they're incapable, but because years of putting themselves last eroded that self trust. And I really want to say this part carefully because it matters. The answer is not becoming more selfish. The answer is becoming more honest. Honest about the fact that the current way of doing things isn't working. Honest about the fact that constantly abandoning yourself has consequences. Honest about the fact that waiting for the perfect time is keeping you stuck. Honest about the fact that you cannot keep pouring from an empty cup and calling it strength. There is strength in being there for people. Of course there is. But there is also strength in saying, I matter too. My health matters too. My body matters too. And my confidence matters too. That is powerful. And I think for many women, the comeback starts there. Not with a perfect meal plan, not with a brutal workout plan, not with an all or nothing challenge. It starts with a decision, a quiet, serious decision, a decision that says, I cannot keep disappearing in my own life. I do not want to spend the next 5 years feeling like this. I'm done waiting for permission. I'm done acting like wanting more for myself is selfish. I'm ready to become part of my own life again. That's where it starts. Then after that, the practical side matters. And this is the part I think is really important because a lot of women know they need to change something, but they made the mistake of trying to change everything all at once. And that usually fails because when you already feel overwhelmed and disconnected, the last thing you need to plan is that makes your life harder. You don't need punishment. You need rebuilding. You need a structure that helps you reconnect with yourself. You need small wins. You need evidence, consistency, support, a plan that fits your real life, not some fancy version of it. That might mean starting with really simple things, walking every day, drinking more water, eating proper meals instead of picking at everything, getting your protein in, training 2 or 3 times a week in a way that feels achievable, going to bed a bit earlier, stopping the cycle of good all day, chaos at night, creating tiny non negotiables and actually sticking to them. And that may sound basic, but it often is where the real comeback begins. Because every time you follow through on something that supports you, you then send yourself a message. You send yourself the message, I haven't given up on me. I am worth the effort. I can trust myself again. I'm not just here to survive. I'm allowed to take up space in my own life. And that is huge because what most women actually need is not just a plan for their body. They need a process that helps them reconnect to themselves. That is why the physical transformation and the emotional transformation are always linked. A woman starts moving again, eating better, showing up for herself, feeling stronger, having more energy, sleeping better, wearing clothes she feels good in, speaking differently, standing differently. And yes, the body changes. But the bigger thing is she starts to remember who she actually is. And that is why, well, that is what makes it so powerful. And I've seen it so many times. Women often come into coaching thinking the biggest goal is fat loss. And of course, fat loss matters. Of course it does. Feeling good in your body matters. Of course it does. Feeling good in your clothes matters. Looking in the mirror and liking what you see matters. But what usually happens is they get more than that. They get their confidence back, their structure back, their self respect back, their energy back, their belief back, and their standards back. They stop speaking to themselves like they're a lost cause. They stop treating themselves like the least important person in the room. And that changes everything. Because when a woman starts showing up for herself properly, it impacts every area of life. Mood improves, patience improves, energy improves, relationships improve, self image improves, the way she walks into rooms changes, the way she handles stress changes, and the example she sets changes. And importantly, she stops teaching herself that her needs do not matter. That is not selfish, that is healthy. I also think there's a really important message here for women whose kids are older now, or have flown the nest, or simply need them in a different way to they used to. Because that season can bring up a lot. For years, your purpose may have been tied to being needed, to doing, to caring, to managing, to giving. And when that changes, it feels like the structure of your identity changes too. And that can feel unsettling, even lonely. But I want to say this. The end of one role being so dominant in your life does not mean the best part of your life is behind you. It could actually mean the opposite. It could mean this is the first time in years that you have a genuine opportunity to reconnect with yourself. Not the younger version of you exactly, not the old version, not some version from before life got busy, but the next version, a wiser version, a stronger version, a version with more standards, more self respect, a version who knows that being everything to everyone else at the expense of herself is not the goal anymore. And that is exciting. And yes, don't get me wrong, that can be uncomfortable too, because coming back to yourself after years of being disconnected is uncomfortable. But you have to look at what you've been tolerating. You have to look at the habits you've normalized. You have to look at the way you've abandoned yourself. You have to challenge the guilt. You have to stop waiting to feel ready. You have to stop saying later to one of the things that you know you need now. That takes courage. But trust me, the alternative is much harder. The alternative is spending year after year in a body and a life that does not feel like yours anymore. And that cost is so high. The cost of not doing something is not just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's relational, it's the slow loss of confidence, this slow loss of identity, the slow acceptance of, I guess this is just me now. And I hate that sentence. I guess this is just me now, because so often it isn't. It's just the result of years of neglect, stress, and putting yourself last. That is not your identity. That is your environment. That is your pattern. That is your current position. And positions can change. That is the hopeful part. You're not stuck in this version forever. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not too far gone. You have not missed your chance. But you do have to decide that you matter enough to do something about it. That's the bit nobody can do for you. Obviously, support helps, coaching helps, community helps, and structure helps. But at some point, it comes back to a decision, a real decision. Not, I'll see how I feel. Not maybe after this month. Not, I'll try. A decision. I'm doing this. I'm changing this. I'm no longer sitting at the bottom of my own life. I'm no longer waiting for life to magically make space for me. I'm making space. And that is where change change gets teeth. And I think a good place to finish the episode is speaking directly to the woman who listening to this and feels in her chest that the woman who's been strong for everyone, the woman who's tired of feeling like she's faded into the background, the woman who's fed up of saying she'll start and never getting there, the woman who's lost confidence in her body, her routine, and herself. The woman feels like somewhere along the line, she stopped being her. Here's what I want to say to you. You are still in there. You have not disappeared forever. You are not broken. You have not ruined your chance. You have not become a lost cause. You are a woman who have carried a lot. You're a woman who has given a lot. You're a woman who's probably kept going through more than most people realize. But now it is time to direct some of that care, effort, and strength back towards yourself. Not because nobody else matters, but because you matter as well. And your life deserves more than you just existing on the edge of it. Your body deserves more than being spoken to with frustration every day. Your mind deserves more than constant guilt and criticism. Your future deserves more than I'll do it later. And you deserve more than constantly being the afterthought of your own story. This comeback is not about becoming somebody completely new. It's about coming home to the parts that you've been, well, of you that have been neglected. It's about rebuilding your standards, your strength, your confidence, your self-trust, rebuilding the relationship that you have with yourself. And that starts smaller than people think. One walk, one workout, one better meal, one boundary, one honest conversation, one promise kept to yourself, one week of showing up, then another. That is how women come back to themselves. Not overnight, but powerfully. So if today's episode hit home, let it be a clear wake up call rather than another moment that passes and gets ignored. Ask yourself honestly, where have I been abandoning myself? Where have I made everyone else's needs more important than my own? What am I actually tired of feeling? What would it look like to start showing up for me properly again? And how would the future version of me thank me for acting now instead of later? Because that future version of you is not built by wishing. She is built by decisions, by standards, by action, by choosing again and again that you are worth showing up for. And maybe that's the real message of this episode. So many women lose themselves after years of being there for everyone else because they've been praised for self-sacrifice, conditioned to cope, and given very little permission to prioritize themselves without guilt. But that does not have to be the end of the story. You can be there for people and still be there for yourself. You can still love your family and rebuild your body. You can care for others and still protect your energy. You have spent years putting yourself last and still decide that from here, things are going to change. And that decision could be the start of everything. Thank you for listening to the Comeback Conversations. And if this one resonated with you, don't just nod along and move on. Do something with it. Take the walk, book the session, start the routine, reply to the message, ask for help, draw the line in the sand. Because the women who come back to themselves are not the women who wait for perfect timing. They're the women who decide they've waited long enough. And maybe today, that woman gets to be you. And trust me, I hope it is.